Well, the concrete is here. Maybe if I slow down a little bit, they can be done before I get over there. Oh yeah. I'd like to help, but I don't have a cameraman. You
have to hire
a production crew. Have Jordan run the camera. Karen could, then I could sleep my way to the top. So we're running on these footings. What we did is it's a 5,000 psi concrete. So on the outside, that's the top of the concrete. On the inside, it'll get brought up to the top of the form for that whole thing, and that's where your steel columns for the building go. And we wanted to pour these separate just so we don't run the risk of you get this high, and we didn't want to have a blowout or anything back there. He's got a bunch of rebar to hook in after while he's magging them off, and so Charles and I think three of the guys that are going to be doing the floor, they each have over 40,000 hours on the clock, and then they always did this after hours work as well, and so I trust them absolutely. He's holding up. You get that quarter yard off, that'll really lighten you up. All that weight off the front axle, you know. All right, so the concrete looks good. Everything went good there. They got to bend. They got to bend, and they got to cut the bars off to elevation and then bend them to be in the right spot, so they don't interfere with the J-bolts that are going in, because you got some J-bolts, a big threaded bolt like a J, like a candy cane, and they'll come up through the finished concrete, and that's what the column of the building, how the column of the building will get bolted to the concrete. So that all went good yesterday. So we noticed some collapse of our trench going over to the water, and so I called the backhoe guy back and I said, hey, you got to come back and check this out. I don't know what you guys did or what you didn't do. So he came back, and we mucked this spot out, and that clay was just, we got a little bit of rain and it all just follows that trench now, because that's just how water works. And so it just saturated that trench. So we mucked out a few more feet of clay and brought in more rock. So this got pretty solid. I'm happy with this. And then after he was gone, I'm like, wait a minute, because I had him come up here because I found a crack in the grate up here. So I had him spin around and take a pull, and he hit it with this bucket, and it was solid. I'm like, oh, okay. So the hole was right here, and I could just bury my shovel handle upside down, and that's not right. Well, then pretty soon I could start to push the shovel handle that way out under the grade. And so we grabbed the Massey, we put the suitcase weights on the front of the Massey and come up here, and it collapsed, which is fine, because that's how much that clay settled. So that was several days ago, and it hasn't moved since, and that's good. So then I took the tractor with all that weight on that front tire, and I drove a dozen times back and forth this morning on it. It still hasn't moved yet, so it's back to good and solid, because that's how the finished grade should be, that no matter how much I travel on it, other than the dust on top making a wheel mark, you have no impressions whatsoever. So now I'll just drop this rock up here and just back drag a little bit to smooth that trench up. I'll I'll come somehow and push this rock back in here a little bit, and then when they come, they got to come with then I got to get a couple buckets of gravel set up in here, because you can see where we're low on the edges, and that's fine. I didn't really care too much about that because of what we had to dig out and all of the work you're doing around the edges. Who cares if your grade's off out there, because you know you'll be correcting it. So I'll get a couple buckets of rock plopped in here for them, and I got a plop back there, so then they can grade this off and start putting down the poly and the rebar. And so then in a couple weeks the concrete's here. So yeah, it's coming along.